okay? Yeah,
Yes.
great. Okay, thanks, Rob, for that, for saying a lot of things that I don't have to say. I'm going to concentrate on three parties: the Linke, the Bundesrat Wahlknecht BSV, and the AfD. If I if I do this in a short amount of time, I'll have some conclusions at the end. But let's see how I go over time. To talk about Linke, 1 month ago, the Linke was dead and buried. Certainly as an electoral party, it was regularly polling at 3%. Rob has said to get into Parliament at all, you need to get 5%. There was some hope that if you get three people directly elected, you can get in on less than that. And the whole Linke strategy was, well, let's just try and get three people directly invited, and at least we'll have some sort of presence in Parliament. In the last month, it has trebled its vote, and I'll going to say that. But the Linke is not what it was. It was part of the wave which came out of the big anti-globalization, anti-capitalist movements at the beginning of the century, which also produced parties like Syriza and Podemos. In the week that the Linke was formed, there was the last big demonstration against the G8 in Heiligendamm in eastern Germany. We didn't know it was going to be the last one, but the Linke was product of a time in which really there were mass movements on the streets. In the first few years of the party's existence, it was heavily involved in an organisation called Dresden Nazi Frei, which prevented the largest Nazi march in Europe from happening. By the time the election at 2021, I'll start with the election, the Linke had largely become absent from any social movements. That there'd been arguments that they can't get involved in Fridays for Future because the Greens would benefit from that. There was a large but short-lived Black Lives Matter movement in Germany where the Linke again was completely absent. And yeah, we need a different meeting to talk about the German left and Palestine. But just after October the 7th, there was a demonstration supported by all the German parties, parliamentary parties, including the Linke, in support of Israel. And the fact that there was a lively Palestine movement, which wasn't as big in other countries, but the Linke spent most of its time on the other side. So that's where we are. The first big test on the new government the Linke had was a couple of months after the election, Russia invaded Ukraine. The new government doubled military spending. There was a new double military spending. This is at a time when rents are going up, prices were going up hugely because of the embargo on Russia. The cost of a bottle of cooking oil, for example, had gone up from €1 to €5 or €6, and so people were feeling the pain of increasing prices at the same time that the supposedly liberal governments had doubled military spending. The Linke was split down three main factions around this. There was the tradition, and the Linke does have roots in the anti-war movements, who said sending German weapons to Ukraine, firstly, it would only escalate the situation, but secondly, we need the money for spending on social spending and on people, not profits. That was, however, only one of the positions inside the party. There was a second faction who were arguing that anti-imperialism means also fighting Russian imperialism, a position which you could understand, but it ended up saying, well, maybe we can ask the German state to send some nice weapons to Ukraine, and maybe they won't put conditions, and maybe this idea of doubling military spending is good for the sake of Ukraine. And there's a third group, which is probably the most influential group, which was the party right wing, who has always controlled the party, who see the main function of the Linke as taking part in governments. Now, a party the size of the Linke won't get into government on its own, so you need to make coalitions with parties like the SPD and the Greens, who have always made it clear that any coalition has got to include support for NATO. And so we have shall we say, the anti-war the anti-war part of the party was in conflict with the let's say the useful idiots in support of Ukraine and the people who NATO at any price to get into a coalition, which meant, as had become quite common, the party said nothing at all about Ukraine. That there at a time when there is rising prices and a lot of people are worried about war, particularly in the east where you're quite close to Ukraine. The Linke wasn't able to offer a lead on any side, which offered a space for Sarah Wagenknecht. Sarah Wagenknecht was still a member of the Linke at the time, was still a Linke MP at the time. She had been associated with the left of the party, but she's got complicated politics. We're probably not have time to go into a full, but she was very much anti-Ukraine war. She, together with leading feminist Alice Schwarzer, called a demonstration which attracted 50,000 people. That led gradually to Wagenknecht and other MPs, so 10 in total, breaking from the Linke and forming the Sarah Wagenknecht, the Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, which stood in the European elections, getting 6.2% of the votes at the same time that the Linke was getting 2.7%. And there was serious thought at the time that the Linke was dead. It had been replaced by the Sarah Wagenknecht, which was a problem because Wagenknecht was not just anti-war. She has always had a very dubious position on refugees. She produced a book a couple of years ago called The Selbstgerecht and the Self-Righteous, where really she laid into anyone fighting for women's rights or gay rights or trans rights as being meaningless identity politics, and with a vision really of she's supporting she's supporting working class people. Her vision of working class people consisted almost entirely of middle-aged white men. Last year there was a knife attack in Solingen, carried out by somebody who was attacked in the press for being being an illegal migrant, which he wasn't. Wagenknecht made a statement attacking 10 years of uncontrolled migration. She made a 6-point plan calling for more deportation. In the recent election, she's stopped calling herself a socialist at all. She is calling herself a left-wing conservative. Now, I was going to say the peak, so the depth of what happened with the Bundeswehr Wagenknecht came in January, so last month, where Friedrich Merz, trying to gain votes and trying to get aside the AFD through racism, put forward a bill for calling for extra deportation to Parliament. This became renowned in the international news as being the thing where Merz broke the firewall. The firewall is an agreement by all parties not to cooperate with the AfD and not to not to put in any parliamentary votes which depends on the AfD. Now, Merz used the AfD to try and get through his his deportation bill, but the Bundeswehr Wagenknecht MPs also all voted for this. And to be honest, there was a second bill which just failed to get through. Some of the CDU, some of the Conservative MPs pulled back from supporting it, and all the Bundeswehr Wagenknecht MPs were still backing more deportations and working with the AfD in Parliament. So this is, two different lefts which are existing in Germany at the moment. All this is happening at the time when the AfD was consolidating itself as a fascist party. The AfD had been formed just over 10 years ago, very similar to what Reform UK is like now, or what the Brexit Party was like. It was known as an academics party of people who are opposed to the EU. It was racist. There were fascists in it, but the leadership were mainly right-wing academics. By 2023, most of the right-wing academics had been kicked out of the party or had left it. The fascists had taken over. There was a report at the end of 2023 that there was a meeting in Potsdam near Berlin where leading AFD members were meeting with Nazis and identitarians to discuss something which became a buzzword and which is still a buzzword of remigration. Remigration is the forced deportation of up to 15 million people, which is something which is only impossible with extreme physical force. And this became a central part of the AFD's electoral campaign. There was, I don't think people remember, the last Christmas, there was an attack at Magdeburg Christmas market, ironically by a supporter of the AFD, which raised a whole load of scaremongering, including from AFD leader Alice Weidel, who explicitly called for remigration as a speech where she was cheered on by masses. Now, it's important that Weidel said this because Weidel has traditionally tried to associate herself with the conservative rather than Nazi wing of the party. I think a good comparison would be with Marine Le Pen in France, where there is a difference in strategy between Weidel and the more open Nazis like Björn Höcke, who's the party leader in Thuringen. But they are both good. They work well together, and they're both going for things the same way. Weidel is prioritizing getting into parliament and building a Nazi core from a parliamentary, from a large parliamentary figure position. Höcke is more concentrating on street fighting, but they are part of the same organisation and they are working together to do the same thing. We found one last thing at the AFD party conference, which was this January. There was a leaflet which was distributed, I think, from the AFD in Karlsruhe, addressed to passenger illegal immigrants, containing the text, the passengers to board at Gate AfD on 23rd of February, the day of the election, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. At the bottom it said, only remigration can save Germany. And so you have AfD having a very hardcore push around mass deportations and around building a Nazi core in the street. Now, there were two reactions to the AfD's growing influence. There was the parliamentary reaction, which Rob has touched on, from the CDU, but also from the SPD and from the Greens, which responded by attacking migrants. The Spiegel magazine contained interviews with leaders of both the SPD and the Greens, in which both of them called for more deportations. Their idea is that the way in which we can stop the AFD is by adopting their clothes. This is a disastrous strategy, which has partly contributed towards the high of the high vote that the AfD got. But there was a similar another response, which on the streets. That after the announcements, where the reports were made of the remigration conference, the conference in Potsdam, there were demonstrations of hundreds of thousands of people. The last month, there was 15,000 people turned up to a demonstration which started at 6 in the morning in Riesa in East Germany, away from anywhere, blocking the AFD party conference. And again, last weekend, in the weekend of the election, 100,000 people have took part in demonstrations throughout Germany. Now, if you want to understand the electoral support from the Linke, you've got to look at this surge of street action and public feeling against the AFD. I got a call out of nowhere from a friend I hadn't seen for ages, day before the election, said, look, if the CDU going to a coalition with the AFD, the cards are dealt completely new. We need a different sort of movement. We need, from the vote first day, to organise strikes, to organise mass demonstrations. And who's going to do that then? And the feeling in the population that people suddenly realised how serious the AfD threat is and that we've got to do something. There's a slight problem that this has largely manifested itself just on the voting of level of voting. There was a speech in the Bundestag by the leader of the Linke fraction, Heidi Reicheneck, which went viral. She said, "We are the Brandmauer. The Brandmauer is what separates us from the AFD. We will take to the streets and to the ballot box." And she ended by speech by calling people to take to the barricades. The speech got 6 million views on TikTok. And I think this was the main reason why the Linke vote went up. It's also had a huge surge in membership. There's now 100,000 members of the Linke. There was about 60,000 a couple of months ago. But this doesn't resolve any of the party's internal contradictions. The demonstration on the streets against the AfD haven't been organised by the Linke. They've been organised by local anti-fascist groups or just by people getting up with their friends and organising. And so we say, well, on the one hand, Die Linke is perceived as being the anti-fascist party, partly because the other parts have been so terrible on racism. Then at the same time, it's not really been there on the ground. A comparison is whenever there's a big discussion on the environment, the Greens get a surge in vote, even though their record is terrible. If I'm gonna, okay, I'm not gonna do the what happens now bit, but maybe at the end people got questions. Two things. One thing, the Linke has got to get over its internal contradiction. It's only 3 months since the Linke expelled Palestinian activist Ramzi Kilani because of his anti-imperialist activism. This was pushed by the right wing of the party, but it was at the time when the party leadership was in the control of the centre-left, and not one of them stood up against it. The second thing is that one good result is for the first time ever, Die Linke got a directly elected MP in the migrant working class area of Berlin-Neukölln. That is Ferhat Koçak, who is a Kurdish anti-racist revolutionary who has promised to bring the social movement into parliament. Ferhat and others have got a contradiction ahead of themselves into what extent he is going to build the movement which brought him to power, and which brought the Linke support, at the same time as a party which has absented itself from most social movements and is benefiting from to a degree from activities which didn't build itself. Because you want me to, so okay, I've got other things to say. I'll do this. Firstly, two very quick things. One, after the breaking of the firewall, will this go on? The answer is, well, it's too early to say, but there is definitely potential. That Friedrich Merz would love to go into a coalition with the AfD. That would be the preferred coalition. Because of the response to the breaking of the firewall, because of the large demonstrations, he doesn't feel it will be a suicidal move in terms of his party. And so, yes, the breaking of the firewall has very much encouraged the right to cozy up to the AfD, but they're not the only players. The other thing people have mentioned, the horrible situation in East Germany. Every single state in East Germany the AfD received over 30% of the vote. But one of the things this election showed was it's not just East Germany, that there was only one state in the whole of Germany where the AfD received less than 15% of the vote. And that was Hamburg, which has been the size of a number of large anti-racist demonstrations. The AfD is making progress in the west as well as the east, and shouldn't be just put down as an Eastern problem. There are a couple of things. A couple of people of migrants. It's 25% of people who live in Berlin don't have a German passport, and a lot of them are a lot more are sons and daughters of migrants. Migrants are an intrinsic part of the German working class, which is why their side tries to divide us so much, which is why it's not just the AfD, it's the CDU, and it's the SPD, and it's the Greens, and it's Sarah Wagenknecht who are pushing for deportations, because that divides us. And the fact that everybody is doing this makes racism become part of a general conversation. This permeates even down to that Germany has, I don't have the time to talk about, a specific problem with Palestine mobilization, even though over 80% of Germans are opposed to selling arms to Israel. At the same time, the Palestine demonstrations are small. And we got to the point last Saturday where there's a demonstration against cuts in Berlin, where the trade union stewards took the Palestine bloc out of the demonstration, didn't let the Palestine bloc march any further. And so the divisions pushed down from above are taken on by leaders of our side, which makes it harder for us to fight. I think any fight against whether it be war or fascism or capitalism, migrants have got to play a central role, and we shouldn't allow these divisions to happen. How to work with people in Die Linke. I think we do need to reiterate, it is a good thing that Die Linke didn't just double their support, they trebled their support in 1 month. And this is a tremendous thing. There are 100,000 new members in Die Linke. They've joined for a number of different reasons, mainly because of worried about the AFD. I had a fairly typical experience the weekend of the election. A friend of mine I haven't seen for 2 years rang me up and said, "Are you coming? Are you coming to bring up the vote for Die Linke?" She used to hate Die Linke. She from left wing. She had nothing to, and so a lot of activists at the moment, particularly after the election results, particularly after the Linke did so well, if they are looking for somewhere, someone said, have a left to go to. Most people, short term, Die Linke is going to be a place that people will go to when they look for a left. In particular, in Neukölln, so Ferhat Kocak, I say, who is going to be a tremendous MP if he stops his party stopping his work, which is not a foregone conclusion at all. I think the Linke is going to come against its own contradictions, so that there's too much of a push which is built on winning elections and not on building social movements. But this is something people will learn through experience and not through being lectured to by someone selling a socialist newspaper. And so we really need to work alongside these people who are joining into the Linke with the hope, for the reason they want to change society. And then when the Linke doesn't deliver, which I don't think it will, we are going to have a relationship from a point of solidarity, which means that we can take them further and we can offer them a real left. Couple of last points. Firstly, however bad the traffic light coalition was, Merz is going to be worse. This is going to be a horrible government. I'm sure Rob can say more about it, but the first promises by Merz, two promises: one, even more militarization, make the military budget even higher than it is already, and second, Benjamin Netanyahu has been invited to visit Berlin, and so this is not going to be a left-wing government at all. But it's also going to be one which is quite possibly not going to deliver, not going to be able to resolve the way in which it can, at the same time, spend a lot on the military and the other time deal with economic crisis. And the AFD is waiting at the wings. That after the election, Alice Weidel, AFD leader, said, "Of course, yeah, we're here. We'd love to form a coalition with the CDU, knowing that they'll be rejected." And then she added, "If, quote, the CDU chooses to govern with left-wing parties, next time we'll come in first." And there is a real danger that this government will fail. I think that's left of a day. I think this government will fail. And there's a real danger that the people picking up will be the AFD. At the same time, this isn't inevitable. There is a polarization in society, which is not just going to the right wing. I mean, we see this in the anti-fascist mobilizations. We see this in the votes for Die Linke, but also at the moment, 2.5 million public sector workers have started warning strikes for a pay rise of 8%. At the moment in Berlin, transport workers are on strike, and of course there is this real need that people feel to do something about the AFD, and so the prospects in Germany are potentially horrific. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing we can do about it, and that doesn't mean that organised socialists can't play a crucial role in being able to deliver what people are looking for in Die Linke, what they probably won't find from in Die Linke, but addresses their real need need for change. And I think it is not inevitable that prospects are good for socialists, but we are in a position where if we get our act right, we can make a crucial